Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Claire's Circle. Today, I want to share a story that's a little different from what we usually discuss. This isn't a story about a conflict that tears a family apart, but about a fear that nearly did, and the surprising strength of love that ultimately saved everything. This story comes from a young woman who asked to remain anonymous, but she wanted to share her experience in the hopes it might help someone else who might be going through something similar right now. It's a story about a 15-year-old girl, a secret she was terrified to reveal, and a father's love. We'll call our protagonist Maya. She describes herself at 15 as the perfect daughter. She was a straight A student, captain of the soccer team, quiet and responsible. She lived alone with her father, David. Maya's mother died in a car accident when she was only 5, and since then, David had been both mom and dad to her. He had poured his entire life, all his energy, into raising her the right way. David was a good father, loving, caring, but very strict. He was obsessed with her future. He would study every one of her report cards under a microscope. Every grade less than an A became the subject of a long lecture about missed opportunities. His dream was for her to get into an Ivy League university. He had strict rules about dating, parties, and friends. He wasn't a cruel tyrant, but his pride in his daughter's achievements created an atmosphere of constant pressure in their home. Maya writes that she loved her father more than anything in the world, but at the same time, she was terrified of him. She wasn't afraid of his anger, but of his disappointment. In his eyes, she saw not only her own hopes, but the hopes he had held for her mother as well. It felt to her that she was his one successful project, the living legacy of his late wife. To disappoint him felt equivalent to betraying them both. That's why, on the day she sat in the bathroom staring at the 2 lines on a pregnancy test, her first thought wasn't, "What do I do?" but "What will dad say?" Her world, so orderly and planned, collapsed in an instant. The panic was icy and all consuming. A single thought pounded in her head: my life is over. His life is over. I've ruined everything. For the next few months, Maya lived as if in a fog, carrying the weight of her secret. She learned to hide her morning sickness, blaming it on food poisoning. She started wearing baggy sweatshirts, explaining it was a new style. But the constant, gnawing anxiety began to take its toll. For the first time in her life, her grades started to slip. She became distracted, unable to focus in class. And this, of course, did not escape her father's notice. He started to worry. He tried to talk to her, but she would shut down. His concern turned to disappointment. He started lecturing her even more often. "Maya, what's going on? You're getting lazy. You have to pull yourself together if you want to achieve anything." Every word like that was a blow to her. He was disappointed in her for bad grades without having any idea of the real reason for her state. The first person she told was her boyfriend, Ethan. He was 16. He was a teenager just like her, scared, confused, but he didn't run. He took her hand and said, "I'm with you. We'll figure something out." He offered to go with him to tell her dad, but Maya couldn't. The very sight of her father paralyzed her with fear. She felt completely alone until she decided to take a desperate step. She called her grandmother, Sarah, her father's mother. She asked her to come for the weekend, saying she missed her. On Saturday, when her father had gone out to run some errands, Maya sat with her grandmother in the kitchen and, unable to hold it in any longer, burst into tears and told her everything. She expected anything: shock, reproaches, disappointment. But her grandmother didn't say a word. She just came over, hugged her tightly, and sat with her for a long time until Maya had cried herself out. And then she began to talk. She didn't offer advice. She told her a story about her father, about what he was like when he was 17, about the time he crashed his grandfather's car and was so scared to confess that he hid the wrecked car at a friend's house for a week. She talked about how scared and lost he was when his wife died, how he was terrified he wouldn't be able to handle raising a little girl on his own. She wasn't excusing his strictness, but she humanized him. She showed Maya that behind the image of the harsh and demanding father was a man who was himself afraid, afraid of failing, afraid of not living up to expectations, afraid for her future. He loves you more than anything in the world, sweetie, her grandmother said. But his love is mixed with his fear. You'll have to weather a storm when you tell him, but I promise you, after the storm, the sun always comes out. And I'll be by your side, no matter what. That conversation didn't solve the problem, but it gave Maya what she was missing most, the feeling that she was not alone. She and her grandmother made a plan, not a plan on how to fix the situation, but a plan on how to simply tell the truth. Maya describes the evening of the confession as the most terrifying of her life. She waited for her father to come home from work. She rehearsed the words, but when he walked in the door, they all flew out of her head. He was in a bad mood. He was holding her latest report card and began the conversation with a lecture. Maya, I don't understand. A C in history? What is this? We were talking about Harvard, and you're slipping into C's. And in that moment, in desperation, she just interrupted him. She stood up in the middle of the living room and, stammering, said, Dad, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed those words was deafening. He stared at her, and his face was blank. Then it slowly began to change. It wasn't the anger she had expected, it was something worse. A cold, impenetrable disappointment, the very expression she had feared her entire life. He didn't yell. He spoke very quietly, which made it even terrifying. He said, You had one job, Maya, one, not to throw your life away. And you couldn't even do that. He turned around, went into his bedroom, and closed the door. For Maya, it was the end of the world. She curled up on the couch, feeling her world crumble to dust. She called her grandmother, who told her just one thing. Hold on, sweetie. Give him time. Just give him time. She didn't sleep all night, listening to the silence from behind his door and feeling like the loneliest, most miserable person on the planet. She didn't know what was happening in that room. Later, much later, he told her. He told her that on that night, he wasn't just disappointed, he was horrified. He was horrified for her health, for her future, for her stolen youth. He felt that he had failed as a father, that he hadn't managed, that he'd let down his late wife. He spent the entire night looking at old photos. Here was his wife holding a newborn Maya. Here was Maya on her first day of school. Here she was with a medal from a school competition. He was mourning the future he had painted for her, a future that now, it seemed to him, was lost forever. The next morning, his bedroom door opened. He came out. His eyes were red from a sleepless night. He looked 10 years older. He walked over to the couch where Maya was still huddled in a ball. He didn't say anything. He just sat down next to her and hugged her. He was silent for a long time, and then he spoke, his voice trembling. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said yesterday. I was scared. I'm still scared to death, Maya. But we're a team. We've always been a team. And we'll figure this out. Together. It wasn't a magical ending where all the problems instantly disappeared. Ahead of them were difficult conversations, hard decisions, judgment from neighbors and teachers. But in that moment, in her father's embrace, Maya knew the storm had passed, and the sun, just as her grandmother had promised, was indeed beginning to come out. She ended her letter like this. I'm not asking anyone to follow my example. My path was difficult and full of mistakes, but I wanted to share that sometimes behind the worst disappointment, there is only fear, and that sometimes the strongest love is the one that can survive that fear and find its way back to the other person. In a few weeks, I will become a mother, and my dad will be by my side in the delivery room, and I know that we'll be okay.